After a while, we get to some creatures that we have decided belong in the genus Homo. That is to say, they belong in the same category as Homo sapiens or us or other Homo creatures. And it's hard to say why exactly. They didn't pronounce themselves to be part of this, but we think that they're close enough, you would say. That if you have late Australopithecus, between late Australopithecus and early Homo, you have an increase in brain size. You have a reduction in the face size and a difference and a tooth reduction as well, and kind of get different stuff to eat so you don't need those chomping teeth anymore. Become more, what do they call more gracile, more elegant, more soft. Softer the genus Homo is than the robust Australopithecines. One of the first discoveries of the genus Homo, known as Homo habilis, dates from around 2.3 million years ago, found at Olduvai Gorge. Again, I said, has a larger brain case and was called Homo habilis, literally means man the tool maker. We now know that other primates make and use tools. We know that chimpanzees make and use tools, bonobos, and other primates do funny things with stuff in their environment that we might call tool use. But at the time, tools were seen as being peculiar to people, peculiar to man, or located in humans. This creature got named Homo habilis. It's enough like what we see in later Homo groups that we put it in the same genus category. The first evidence of stone tools that is pretty securely we can see the use of stone tools are called the Oldowan tools from around 2.6 million years ago. So they were once associated with Homo habilis, but now we're not so sure of that association. There are some people today that say that they have found even older stone tools from about 3.3 million years ago, but that's still being debated. It's also obviously the case that if we know that chimpanzees and other primates are using tools, there were things that were being used like wood and grass tools and other stuff that is simply decayed. But the advantage to stone tools is they stick around, and now we can find out what they are. The rest of the stuff is gone. Stone tools, in order to make stones into tools, is harder to do than it sounds. It's a process called flint knapping, and people believe that this led to humans doing a type of learning which is apprentice style learning, where you have to watch the people who know how to do it, imitate that, and then pass that on as a tradition. This is hard to do if you ever have a chance to take a flint knapping class or go to a flint knapping demonstration. You can try your hand at it. It's unclear what these early stone tools were used for. They're sometimes sharp. Maybe they were used to butcher animals or to hunt things somehow, but they don't seem to be very good at the actual hunt. Some people believe that these early Homo creatures were getting a lot of their nutrition from scavenging. That is, they would swoop in with their stone tools after a creature had been killed. And then once the vultures and other predators got done eating the flesh off of it, they would take the bones and crack the bones open and get some of the marrow out of the bones. I put question marks there because it's hard to know. There have been a lot of ideas about what these tools might have been used for. We don't know. Here are some examples of some of these tools. You'll notice that some of them look like just rocks, so it's sometimes hard to tell. Again, a lot of these tools were said to be from Homo habilis, but that's now debated. Some of the tools that we know as the Gona tools from about 2.5 million years ago were made we think by Australopithecus garhi, so it wasn't a Homo species yet. And it doesn't seem like you have to have a super large brain in order to make these tools. So it seems like many of the early stone tools, the people who made them, the creatures who made them, it could have been all kinds of different species who made these tools independently of each other. It's hard to say. Interestingly, this has probably become even harder to say when people observed these. They found these Capuchin monkeys who could they bash rocks together. Don't know why. Lick the dust. Who knows why? Maybe they like the sound and don't seem to be doing it much with it. They do use it for other things. And then they took some of these stone flakes and they gave them to archaeologists and said, and who try and figure out human stone tools. And it was like, what is this? Is this made by a human? And the archaeologists couldn't tell whether it was the Capuchin monkey or early stone tool. All right. Other clues for whether these are human, how humans are transforming themselves. As we just noticed, it's very difficult to tell the early tools from rocks or things that might have been banged up by other monkeys. There might be anatomical differences in how people start to use their hands and how people start to co-evolve with their tools as they pass this knowledge along, or just evidence for how people used their hands as they were alive. It's really nice if we can find butchering marks on other bones that shows that some of these tools were used for that. Very rare to find this. Gets exciting when you can, but it's a very rare find. It's hard to tell what exactly some of these tools were used for. What is so exciting about these stone tools, though, is that they provide us the earliest evidence of material culture. Not just the earliest evidence, we know that there was culture and tool use before then, but we get excited about it because this is preserved culture, material culture, preserved evidence that creatures are learning things. So we know that in terms of learning culture, that many primates have basic tool use. We talked about the chimpanzees and their termite fishing sticks, different things that they will use, reshape the basic tool use. This is a macaque monkey who these are found in temple sites around, very famously in Indonesia and Bali. This macaque has learned how to use human hair in order to floss its teeth. So you go there and a monkey pulls out your hair. You probably know it's being used for dental floss. So we see many basic tool use in many primates. In chimpanzees, bonobos, you see a cultural transmission, so handing down customs from generation to generation. In chimpanzees, we see, for example, different grooming patterns being handed down from group to group, different tools, different learning from each other and then handing them down. What differentiates humans, and we believe starts back around the Homo genus, is that you get cumulative culture, that you are not only handing down traditions, but you start to build upon those. You start to transform the environment around you so that things can get added on to each other, cumulative, and that becomes a part of the conditions of reproduction for the next generation. So that's why we get excited when we see stone tools in the record, because it gives us this evidence that there's cumulative change and that culture or learned behavior is becoming part of the human system. In the last section of this chapter, they talk about how when you're doing paleoanthropology, these stone tools, Stone Age, old anthropological finds, it doesn't really help us that much to just have the bones and be presenting you with bones and fossils and DNA. You need some sort of a story, a narrative, to be able to put this together. Now, some of our stories that we've told haven't been the greatest, in terms of they weren't correct, like the idea that big brains came first, and we needed to change the story around. But you always have to try and fit the evidence into some narrative or story about things, and you have to revise that story based on the evidence, but it's tricky. And then this is an artist who you see in your textbook who does these visual reconstructions. And these again are guesses at what the bones and can tell us. Because features like skin color and hairiness, they don't fossilize. You can't tell somebody's skin color from their bones. How much hair you would have, or how dark or light your skin would be, if you had a beard or not. These are based on ideas of what creatures might have looked like, but they're guesses. And when we tell these stories, we have to be very careful with what we might think of as the conquering hero stories. We often want to project our own image of the cool people from today back onto the past and then go looking for people like that. A lot of paleoanthropology, frankly, there's been a lot of contests between people who will discover a fossil and they'll announce a new species and they want to name it and they want to extract it and they want to take it away and they want to put it in their own museum and they want to be famous. And you just have to be careful with that. There's so many things that we don't know about the past. There's so much that happened back then that very successful creatures, they might not be here in the present, but they probably have lived a lot longer as a species than we will ever live. So we have to be careful about projecting our own ideas into the past. For example, if I talk about creatures that are using stone tools, and we start getting excited about creatures bashing rocks together, and it's even been said that we speculate that we're butchering things and being violent. What kind of creatures do you imagine gender-wise we're using these stone tools? What kind of images pop into your head? I think of these guys being all like crashing in with these stones. What I do know is that if you look at the evidence from today, in a lot of the groups that we can see today, it's the women who are making the tools. And in some cases, men, in some cases, both. So we have to be careful about projecting our own ideas onto the past. Now, that doesn't mean that it was always the women. It would equally be a projection onto the past. But we can know that at least in the present day or among contemporary groups, we have good anthropological evidence that it's the women making and using the stone tools. Oftentimes to do things like scrape hides and things like that, which is not easy and not very fun, and maybe not considered to be a cool form of work. So, one of the best ways that we can get different perspectives on this, because we had a very diverse species lineages going up, and one of the problems has been is that they've only been studied by certain groups of people, usually certain elite white guys. We are hopefully seeing a little bit more diversity in paleoanthropology. And this applies to both the people who are doing the investigations, but it applies also to where the archaeology and paleoanthropology is being conducted. Most of the fossil finds have been in Ethiopia, but there's good stuff to be found in different places as well. The more we get outside of the European continent, the more stuff we're able to find about our past. Now, one of the things that as we confront or as we go into different places that again we want to be careful of is the idea that the stuff that is there belongs to the extractors. The people who dig it up should be able to take it home and put it in their own museums. It's important to know that archaeologists and paleoanthropologists are custodians of the past. That stuff is being displaced. We're digging up ancestors. I want to be careful with that. I want to give due credit to the people who are in that area. When we go in, be a little bit humble about what we can find and discover. So the human record is diverse, and we get better interpretations if we have a diversity of people who are studying it, contributing to it, and recognizing that we need to have good museums and good exhibits all over the place.